Howdy, y'all. We have made it back, believe it or not, to Archeryshack Shop Talk. Technically, podcast 2, but it's really our first one where we're actually talking about stuff. The first thing was just a little intro we did. So we're back. I'm Jeremy.
I'm TJ.
And we're going to talk about some stuff randomly. We've already had a couple people text us and send us some stuff in, but let's talk about some things that have happened this week in the shop to start with.
Where do we go? Where do we start?
I'll tell you what, let's talk about. What about the people that come in and they got to have speed? Let's talk about speed versus a heavy arrow versus whatever.
Kinetic energy.
Yeah.
What's your take on the heavy air speed?
Here's what I think. I think being extreme in either way is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Let's break it down. Let's say you got a guy that wants the most speed possible with the lightest weight arrow. So he's shooting 330, but with a 350 grain arrow and that type of deal.
Pretty much close to dry firing.
Then you got a guy in the middle, which is probably more where I lie. So he's shooting, maybe a little over a 400 grain arrow, shooting right around that 300 mark. And then you got the new breed of people that are coming in and they want an 800 grain or 1,000 grain arrow. They're only shooting 240, 250 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But they're shooting that super heavy arrow. I'm going to bring up a kinetic energy calculator just to throw out some numbers. What do you think about all this?
This goes back to archery does it. It's weird because when we first got into archery, it was speed. I mean, that's just what it was, speed.
Like through the 90s, into the early 2000s, speed.
And then when we got into the 2000s, right about the time Easton released the Axis Airs, when they released them, that's when the heavy air started coming into play.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wanted that heavy air, high kinetic energy.
Yep.
I kind of fall into the middle of the road to a little bit heavier air on my setup. Everybody's setup is different.
Yeah.
I shoot a 30-inch draw, so most of the times with my draw length and air length, it kind of bumps me up into a stiffer spine air.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to run a little bit heavier air than most people. I mean, I could drop down.
Yeah.
But I like that heavy air. It does help quieten my bow down.
Yeah, that's a good point.
As fast as these bows are shooting, my little divergent's like 311 with a 410 grain total grain weight air. So, which 400, that's probably one of the lightest airs I've shot in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to being up 490, 500s.
Yeah.
So I switched up airs last year, shooting a carnivore. I really like it. I like that little bit of extra speed that I get.
Yeah.
So I had to I probably sacrificed a little bit of kinetic energy, but on the backside of it, I did gain a little bit of speed, but that still puts me with a good kinetic energy at the target. So it's not, in theory, which I'm no scientist or physicist or
the hell you say.
Can't even say it. But there's got to be common ground somewhere. You've got to sacrifice a little on the speed and a little bit on the heaviness of the air.
My thing is, people come in like I don't know Ted Nugent personally. I've met him a couple times, but he shoots like a 45-pound bow and he's shooting all kind of stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know that there's an animal much in North America that needs anything to one extreme or another. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I can see out west longer shots.
Yeah.
I know I've never been out west. I would love to go and hunt out west.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see where the guys that hunt elk, hunt mule deer, hunt big whitetails in Kansas, you know, where it's just in the plain states where it's just flat. You don't have a lot of cover and a lot of spot and stalk. I can see where they would like to have that speed and a heavy air because, you know, their shortest shot may be 50 yards.
That's true. That's true. Hey, here's some numbers. I just ran them through the kinetic energy calculator real quick. So here, just some average stuff. A 350 grain arrow at 330 feet per second is 84.62 foot-pounds of kinetic energy. Here's a middle of the road arrow. That was a lightweight. 420 grains at 295 is 81.14, so just a few pounds less. Then an 800 grain arrow at only 230 is 93.95. So it's actually substantially more kinetic energy with a heavy arrow. So it's crazy to see what the different weights have done, but there's substantially, you know, like I said, there's substantially more kinetic energy to that 800 grain and 230 mark. So that's crazy.
Yeah, and I was surprised that the lighter air had a little bit more kinetic energy than the middle of the road. I mean, I know it's got more speed coming out, but I would think it would have sacrificed a little speed.
I know it.
Or a little bit of kinetic energy. So
That's crazy.
it's crazy, man.
One pin sights, people almost are 100% shooting one pin sights now, which was not a thing 10 years ago.
No, it wasn't.
It was 3 and 5 pin sights, and that's all people would shoot. Still got a few people shooting them, but I bet if we looked at the numbers, we sell 31 pin sights to one 3 or 5 pin sight.
Yeah, I think a guy bought a Copper John today, one of the 3 pins or 5 pin, 4 pins.
But it's just crazy. I used to not like the one pin sight because I always was worried, what if the deer's moving and all this, but
and I got to make a quick adjustment.
yeah, once I started shooting one pin and I can line up my peak with that housing of the sight, I just feel like I can shoot better, especially at further distances. And now when I shoot a pin sight, I feel like I come up beside the target and then have to move it over onto the target. So,
well, that's one thing I like. You know, I was religiously a multi-pin sight fan.
yeah,
And I switched over to a one pin and I ain't looked back.
Yeah.
I love it. To me, if I shoot a multi-pin sight now, it seems to me that I lose my field of view because you got the pins coming out from the side.
yeah,
So, I mean, and now with the speed of bows nowadays, you could set your sight on 20 yards, depending on how yours is set up and what you're getting. But you could set it on 20 and shoot from 20 to 40 and and
not drop much. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, coming up soon, we got some folks from the local clubs that'll be on our podcast, and we've also got Russ Armstrong, who had his own hunting radio show for several years. I was on it, I think, in 2007. But anyway,
he's
a
fool.
nut. Yeah, y'all love him. He hunts, he fishes, he shoots bows, guns, he does it all. Birds, he shoots everything. He's just a good all-around dude. He'll be on the next podcast or two. Tournaments have ended for the year, national and local. The SCAA, which is our South Carolina Archery Association, and the Western North Carolina bow hunters met today to get next year's schedule together. We hadn't seen it yet. We've already talked to some of the representatives from the clubs and heard of sort of what's going on, but we'll be talking about that more when we get a few more folks on here. ASA's done. They've released next year's schedule. They're not going to Augusta. We're sad, but it is what it is. It was close to us. Augusta's only like an hour and a half from us. So hunting season's coming up, opens up September 15th, which is like
2 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks away.
3 weeks.
Lower part of the state opened up this week below Columbia.
Seen a couple deer already killed, been a couple big ones.
Yep. I seen a doe in front of the house a while ago. We got a few questions people have emailed in or messenger or however y'all sent them. TJ's got them over on his computer, so I'm scared to know what they sent in.
Let's just go ahead. I have a feeling we're not gonna call no names, so this one we got to take kind of serious because I think this is a new guy to archery. He's just new to it.
All right.
Can you paint your bow bowstrings?
Oh man, no.
Yeah.
As much as and I don't know if it's somebody messing with us or not, but like you say, it probably ain't. But
I mean, that's
you can't dye them, you can't paint them. A bowstring is a group of strands, and each strand is a group of fibers, and the fibers have friction against each other, and that's what your wax does. It coats the fibers to prevent friction, to prevent the bowstring fraying up. If you were to put a paint on it, it would ultimately fray the bowstring up quicker and be a mess. Paint would be flaking off. If you were to try to dye it, I would imagine the wax in the bowstring wouldn't really allow for the dye to penetrate the string, and you'd have a big tie-dyed looking mess. And I don't know if it would hurt the fiber or not, but no. Do not try to paint your bowstring.
no, that
You might could take a Sharpie to it, but it would be ugly.
Yeah. The next question we had was, it is a Bowtech SR6,
I like that
60, 62 pounds, 27.5-inch draw. He wants to know what is a good arrow for him, and all he's going to be doing is 3D, some backyard shooting, and the occasional hunting trip.
I got you. If this guy was standing in the shop, and he'd have said, "Hey, I'm gonna do a little bit of everything, but I'm not serious about any of them." You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna do a little hunting, I'm gonna do a little backyard shooting, maybe hit a tournament or two. If he was in my shop, I would point him toward a Black Eagle Outlaw. It's one of the mid-priced, solid arrows that we carry. They're $45 for 6. They're pre-fletched. All we got to do is cut them, insert them, put the tips in. But just because we carry Black Eagle, I don't think that we're pushing you that way. You know, an Easton Axis would be great. You know, a Gold Tip Hunter or XT Hunter would be great. A Victory, there's a ton of Victory stuff that would be great. You know, so I'd point him towards something middle of the road. You know, I don't want him having something super cheap, but I don't want him to spend $100 for 6 arrows either. So that'd be my suggestion. And spine wise, typically if a guy, let's say he's a 28-inch draw, the arrow will run about 1 inch to 1.25 inches shorter than the draw length. And the reason for that is draw length is measured from the burger buttonhole or the center of the pivot point of the grip 1.75 inches past that, which typically, if you start checking bows, ends up at about the front of the riser. So the rest sits about 1 inch to 1.25 inches, sometimes 1.5 inches behind that point. So if he's a 27.5-inch draw, I think that's what you said, his arrow will end up being like 26.5, maybe even shorter. And at 62 pounds, that should put him in a 400 spine and be right down the middle. So 400 spine in any of those arrows would be great. Axis, XT Hunter, the Outlaw, any of that stuff, that'd be great.
And, you know, it also depends too. I mean, we could all, you know, we carry Black Eagle, we all shoot Black Eagle.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not paid.
No, we're not paid by them. People, every time we say something good about a product on a video, no offense, people are like, "Oh, y'all are sponsored by them or paid by them." We're not. We're absolutely not. We're not sponsored by anybody.
No.
We don't get nothing for free. None of that crap.
No.
So anyway, just throwing it out there. We do those videos, and man, we get so much hate email. I mean, it almost makes me want to quit doing them. But then, you know, there's usually 30 good comments to one guy that's mad because he thinks we're getting paid by whoever. But anyway, just like TJ said, I don't want to go. I don't want to talk more about that.
No, we ain't going down that road. But you know, that guy with Jared, like you know, if
400 spine, really anything will be fine.
Yeah.
I mean, if he wanted to get a little more expensive, he could get a FMJ, or he could get a Spartan or whatever. You know, just according to what his price range is. And my next question to him, if he was standing in the shop, would be, do you want to stick with a standard diameter, or would you rather go a little bit smaller? And then that's kind of where I'd either go Outlaw, or if he said a little smaller, then I'd go Renegade or Spartan, or, you know, I already mentioned the Axis is already smaller. So anyway, 400 spine. If I was going to point at one arrow, it'd be a Black Eagle Outlaw.
You know, we can't get to everybody's questions.
Yeah.
In one podcast.
Send them in. We've only got a few because the word hadn't really spread yet about the podcast. So definitely help us spread the word and keep an eye out.
I think we ought to end our podcast on this question because it might take us a few minutes to discuss this one.
All right.
The infamous question.
Oh, Lord. There's a couple of those.
Mechanical versus fixed blade. This, to me, is the all-time...
Yeah, something else. The infamous mechanical versus fixed blade. People ask us this all the time. And let me tell you my history with Broadheads real quick and straightforward. It's mid to late 90s, I started shooting Muzzy. And back then, I was, of course, a teenager. I shot a 75 grain Muzzy. And for the most part, I loved them. But the Muzzy has a super coarse thread where the trocar screws in. So I finally figured out, I was already into bow tuning at that point. But if I spun it, some of the tips were a little crooked and some were straight. So what I did was I started using like 5-minute epoxy and would sort of, as much as I could, kink the insert to one way or another to make sure the broadhead was straight. And then, so I killed some deer with those, went to the Thunderhead, big old, I can't remember the cut and diameter, but big old sucker helicopter thing, and killed deer with it. Kept shooting sort of that style until 2003 or 4 when Grim Reaper came out. Finally went to Grim Reaper mechanical. Even, I was a little hesitant, which I always am. There's a lot of stuff that takes off, and at first I'm like, don't shoot that, it's junk, whatever, but finally it catches on. But killed deer with the Grim Reaper, and then I was sold. But the reason I wanted the Grim Reaper was because it didn't have the rubber bands, and I didn't want to fool with no rubber bands because they might dry rot or fall off, and I just wasn't going there.
Yeah.
So since then, I've shot both. Usually if a new product comes out and people ask about it, whether it's fixed or mechanical, I'll shoot it for a year and say, all right, this is good, this is bad. If I have bad luck, I'll just quit shooting it. But in the recent years, I've still shot Grim Reaper. That's my go-to most all the time. Whack'ems, I've shot them. They did fine. Shot a few just random weird things. Remember them Crimson Talon broadheads? I shot them. Yeah. They did good. I don't think they're still even made.
I don't either.
I've never shot a Rage broadhead, but I know it's super popular. I don't have anything against them. I just never have shot them, and I know they work because we've tested them. But
yeah.
What do you think? What you've shot?
When I first started out, about everybody back when we was coming up was a 100 grain Thunderhead. Mm-hmm. So. And back, I had no clue what I was doing. I mean, you helped me out and everything, and whenever we got started, and I shot those, they flew great and everything. I think the first mechanical I remember seeing was a Spitfire.
The Spitfire, when it came out, it caught my attention, but it was so stiff to open. I remember I set up, in the range at Bucks and Bass, I set up some cardboard, a couple layers of cardboard, and I put them like 6 inches apart, and I shot through it, and the blades never opened. And I know cardboard is not the same as like a hide, but it was like 3 or 4 layers at each station.
Yeah.
And from about 2 or 3 foot all the way to the target, there was no blades that opened. And that's when I was like, okay, I ain't gonna shoot these.
And Grim Reapers come out. No blades, that internal spring system, no collars to worry about. It does have a collar on it, but all you do with it is you line the blades up with the slits in it. I've had no trouble with them. I've got Rage in my quiver. I've got Whack'ems. I haven't had a chance to shoot one with a Rage. We don't get to hunt like we used to.
That's true.
So a lot of stuff we would love to test, but we have to kind of get feedback from people. Mm-hmm.
I seen 2 boys almost get into a fight back at Bucks and Bass. One guy was talking about all he'll shoot's fixed blades, and then another guy was like, I've shot elk with mechanicals, and they literally got in a hollering match enough to where I called somebody else over and was like, hey, this is about to get bad. And it got loud, and finally I was like, all right, quieten it on down here. But it got wild, but there ain't no reason to get crazy about it. But people are definitely opinionated about broadheads. They come in here and have strong opinions, which is fine. There's really no broadhead that I would be like, there's some Walmart broadheads that people come in with, and you can just you can spin them and they wobble like crazy, and it's not the insert or the arrow, whatever. It's straight up the broadhead. Those stay away from. If there's $6 for 3 of them, don't buy them.
Yeah.
But we're talking about normal broadheads that are $35, $40 to $50 for 3 or 4 of them. All of them are pretty much legit. But
I mean, there's you got swackers is out there now. I haven't shot a swacker. I'm hearing people come in saying I've shot Grim Reapers and I've shot swackers. I'll never shoot a Grim Reaper again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't shot one and like to, but as little as we get to hunt.
I know.
And the whole thing goes back to is you gotta tune your bow to your broadheads and everything. And that that's kind of what we did.
And at least shoot the broadhead. A lot of people just screw them on and go shoot, and then they have, I don't think that's even ethical. At least shoot it a time or two at maybe 20 and 40, make sure it's hitting the same spot.
But nowadays with the way bows are, the way the bows are made, and the tuning process has gotten so much more in depth with everything.
Absolutely.
I don't see why you can't get your broadheads to tune to your field points too.
Oh yeah, and the stuff we do makes that all happen. But we appreciate y'all listening to this. We'll probably go ahead and end it here. We got a lot more stuff to talk about in other podcasts. Got a lot of people coming on, so we appreciate y'all listening. Send us your questions. Watch out for our posts on Facebook of when we're recording, and we'll talk to you next time.
Have a good one.
See y'all.